What if Hitler had won World War II? How different would our world look today? And what would everyday life actually be like? It sounds like something straight out of an alternate history movie, but at one point this outcome was much closer to reality than many people realize. In the early 1940s, Nazi Germany had already conquered Poland and France, was relentlessly bombing Britain, and had pushed deep into Soviet territory. At the same time, Imperial Japan was rapidly expanding across Asia and the Pacific. By 1941, the Allies, the United States, the United Kingdom, and the Soviet Union were under enormous pressure as Axis forces continued to advance on multiple fronts. But everything began to change in 1942. The devastating Battle of Stalingrad marked a turning point, followed by Allied victories in North Africa and crucial naval battles such as Midway. By 1945, Germany was surrounded from all sides. Hitler died by suicide and the Axis powers were ultimately defeated. But what if history had gone the other way? What if Hitler and the Axis powers had actually won? In that alternate timeline, the world would likely have been divided between two enormous empires. Nazi Germany would dominate Europe, North Africa, and much of the Middle East, while Imperial Japan would control large parts of Asia and the Pacific. Britain may have been occupied, with Nazi banners flying over London. France, Poland, and the Netherlands would remain under total Nazi control, while the United States could have become isolated, weakened, or politically influenced by Nazi sympathizers. A world driven by fear, monitor society relentlessly. Speaking against the government could lead to arrest, imprisonment, or worse. Neighbors would be encouraged to report each other. Co-workers, friends, and even family members could become informants. Public punishments and executions would be used to maintain complete obedience and discourage any form of resistance. Technology in a Nazi victory. Surprisingly, technology might still advance, but not in the way most people imagine. Companies like Google, Apple, and other modern tech giants would likely never exist. Instead of focusing on consumer products and innovation, technological development would be directed towards surveillance, military power, and government control. Advanced rockets, aircraft, and weapons would continue to evolve, but primarily as tools of domination rather than exploration. Daily life. Under Nazi rule, daily life would be almost unrecognizable. There would be no free press, no meaningful elections, and no open internet. The government would control information at every level. Books considered politically dangerous or racially undesirable could be banned or destroyed. Schools would teach Nazi ideology from an early age, while history itself would be rewritten to glorify Hitler and the regime. The loss of diversity. One of the most devastating consequences would be the loss of cultural, ethnic, and religious diversity. Under the Nazi vision of a so-called master race, many communities and traditions could face persecution or elimination. Judaism, Islam, and even various Christian denominations might be heavily restricted or suppressed. German could become the dominant language across much of Europe and potentially beyond. The economy of the Axis world. The economy would also look very different from the one we know today. Entrepreneurship and free markets would be heavily limited. Major industries would operate under strict government direction, with factories focused on producing military equipment, surveillance systems, and infrastructure that served the state. Consumer choice would likely be far more limited than in modern democratic societies. Science without ethics. Scientific progress would continue, but ethical boundaries might disappear. Programs similar to Action T4, which targeted people with disabilities, could expand dramatically. The horrific human experiments conducted in concentration camps might become institutionalized rather than condemned. Research could focus on forced sterilization, genetic manipulation, and population control designed to fit Nazi racial ideology. Most tragically of all, the Holocaust may never have been stopped. A lesson from history. This scenario was not impossible. Had key events unfolded differently, if Britain had fallen or if the United States had never entered the war, the course of history could have been far darker. Exploring this possibility reminds us how fragile freedom, democracy, and human rights truly are. And as the world continues to face new challenges and conflicts, the lesson remains the same. Peace is never guaranteed. Freedom must be protected. By remembering the mistakes of the past, we can help ensure that the horrors of war never define our future.